Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, today we're talking about the AGI framework. Now, this is a really cool project, guys. I am so excited to talk to you today about this. So, I've been working on this project since January 19th, 2025. Um, and this project, at its core, is a framework for coordinating multiple AI models together into distinct modules that can work together to create an intelligence system. Now, we're going to get into all the details about how this is working or how it will work. And everything that is laid out in the documentation, we're going to go over everything that I can think of to kind of lay out exactly how it works and how I'm envisioning it working in the end. Now, just to be clear, right now there isn't a working prototype. Now, that doesn't mean that this idea is flawed or that there's something wrong with it or that there is some technical hurdle that I have yet to overcome. As far as things in the way, really the only thing at this point is that really our performance in terms of what we have available for hardware is going to be a limiting factor, but not so limiting that the technology doesn't work. It's just simply going to take longer to use than people would probably like. So you can imagine, rather than typing in a prompt saying, build me a website that does X, Y, or Z, instead of it taking, 10 minutes to do that, it might take several hours, depending on the complexity. So that is mainly the sort of thing to keep in mind with where we're at right now. The main drawback is not that there is some hindrance that is preventing us from making this work. The main thing is that it just hasn't been built yet, and the performance is definitely going to need to be improved over time. This is just a starting point. Just like the beginning of the internet, things were slow at first. Things got faster. It takes time. That's all it is. So let's get into the framework a little bit here. First of all, I just want to go over. Excuse me. I just want to go over how the framework came to be, and exactly what it is, and how it works. So the framework started when I was actually working on a totally unrelated software project. I was starting a company, an app development company called Streamside Apps, and the company was going to launch a web app, and I won't get into the details, but generally, I was finding that the tools I was trying to use were doing 95% of the work, leaving me to do all the tedious stuff that I really just didn't want to do. And so I was going there's got to be a better way, to integrate these tools together, so that I can just automate 100% of this process, and I can just say, build me this web app that does this thing, and it would just do it. That was sort of the general idea at the beginning. So I started working originally, just sort of conceptually, on a model for this. I wanted to say, let's see if I can just make a model that is able to do everything that is needed for just sort of general purpose AGI. And what I quickly found was that this is very impractical, very impractical. The sort of equivalent idea is if you were to take an engine in a car and say, okay, we are going to keep developing this engine as much as we can. We're going to keep adding features to it until eventually we get to a Lamborghini. And can you? Sure, but it's not really that practical, and the gas mileage is going to be tremendously awful, even compared to a regular Lamborghini. So I think the idea with an AGI framework here is that you're taking these individual models, these LLMs that are very, very powerful, and can produce a lot of speed, in the same sense that an engine can produce a lot of speed. These models can produce a lot of output, and they can do so very intelligently. But the problem is that we haven't really utilized that output correctly yet. We haven't sort of integrated all of these pieces and all these tools together in a way that allows them to just sort of work in synergy. And so that's the idea behind the AGI framework, is that, even if you had the ideal AGI model out there someday, whether it's developed by, OpenAI or whoever, even if you had such a thing, it would still be beneficial to you to put that model into a framework composed of several individual models, or modules rather, because with that, you're able to, at that point, have an intelligence system, not just a single model. You have an entire series of modules working together like a symphony orchestra, right? That's sort of the equivalent if you were to think of a model as an instrument. Having a symphony orchestra is like having a framework. And so that is sort of the idea behind this, is that you're taking these individual modules, these Lego bricks, and building something much, much greater than the sum of its parts. That is the general idea. So let's go through an example, exactly how this could really change things. Now, before we do that, actually, I do want to introduce some new developments that have changed. So the first thing is one of the things that has changed since I originally drafted this script was that I did some deep research with Perplexity. I was able to do some research regarding the feasibility and impact of the AGI framework. I wanted specifically to figure out how feasible is this, and exactly what would it look like if it were working, and how would it compare to existing tools. I wanted to get a sense of what is this really going to do for the world. And I was pretty blown away by the results. So the first thing I found, it was quite a long prompt. I won't bore you with the details, but basically, what it found was that there was actually it's 47% more efficient than OpenAI's operator in simulated environments, and achieves 89% better context retention than traditional LLM-based systems. But it does note significant challenges remain in quantifying emergent behavior risks and establishing universal benchmarking standards. So this is really interesting to me. What this says to me is that this has a lot of merit. There is a lot to this, more than maybe I even initially thought. And kind of continuing down through here, we can see it continues to talk about the different parts of the framework and how it works. But we can get down to these numbers here. This is a really interesting table that talks about multitask success rate, context window, ethical compliance, and energy efficiency. And so as you can see here, with the AGI framework, we have 89% multitask success rate over OpenAI Operator at 67% and DeepMind Gato at 71%. So we have quite a significant increase in multitask success rate. And then also we look at the context window. The AGI framework, because of its novel architecture, offers generally unlimited context window tokens, which is a huge advancement in the field of LLMs and AI models. Right now, one of the biggest hurdles is that the context window tends to get filled up, and then you can't fit enough information in to your prompts, and so then it becomes a little less useful than it could be. With the AGI framework, through dynamic memory compression algorithms, you actually could end up with unlimited context window, and so that really changes the game. And then the other thing is the ethical compliance. So if you're looking at OpenAI Operator, that's actually pretty high at 82% already. DeepMind Gato similarly at 78%. But then you look at 94% for the AGI framework, and that really is just, it doesn't sound like a big difference. But that really is almost orders of magnitude more, because when you think about what that prevents in terms of safety sort of leaks, jailbreaks, that sort of thing, it's going to really change the game in terms of ethical compliance. So I think that's really cool. And then in terms of energy efficiency, this is also huge. We're seeing 8.3 teraflops per watt, compared to the best that we have right now in DeepMind Gato of 6.7 teraflops per watt, or 5.1 in OpenAI's Operator. So that's a huge savings. That's a lot less energy being used for the same tasks. And this is just the beginning, right? So this could all be improved over time, with increased efficiencies in the architecture. This is all just getting started, and that's kind of something to keep in mind with all of these numbers, which is that this is all just the beginning. All of this could be improved over time, with improvements in the architecture. So keep that in mind for all of this. So kind of moving on, we can see also that because this allows for, and this is one of the key features I really like about this framework, is that it allows for on-premises deployments. So what that means is you don't have to have your server in the cloud. You can actually have an on-premises server with just a standard, gaming GPU, or whatever high-end GPU you might want. You can use that and then turn it into an AGI server, and that you can use locally, whether it's in your house or in your business. This framework is MIT licensed, so there's no licensing restrictions. Anyone can use this, so it really opens the door, and democratizes everything for everyone. So yeah, it's very exciting in terms of that. So what that allows is, you can have 1,000+ node clusters of servers, maintaining less than 2 milliseconds internode latency, with 98.7% uptime. So that creates a really interesting system where you end up with these AGI servers not just independently working, but working together collaboratively, and also being able to spin up other server instances as necessary. So they can really start delegating work around to other AGI servers, and even AGI servers on the internet. So if IBM is running, their own AGI server that's publicly accessible, then your business's AGI server might be able to interface with IBM's, and be able to do something collaboratively with IBM automatically without really any oversight. So that's really cool. Now that does bring into some, brings some privacy into into the mix. You have to think about privacy considerations, but with the on-premises deployments, you don't technically have to have them be internet connected. They could be offline. So hospitals could keep an on-premises deployment, and have it be HIPAA compliant. This is very game changing. And this is all enabled by advancements like DeepSeek R1, being able to run these local models in a framework like this. It really advances things. So that's very cool. So as we go along, we can see that in healthcare we could actually have 37% faster diagnosis than current AI systems, which is just absolutely mind-boggling, considering that current AI systems are already very fast, much faster, I believe, than even humans can be at this point. So very interesting. It will be very interesting to see how this plays out. And then we can also see that in manufacturing, we have predictive maintenance accuracy improved by 29% over IBM Maximo. So that's also very helpful in terms of manufacturing, because if you can kind of maintain your operations more efficiently, you're going to cut down your costs significantly. That's a huge factor. So all of this, you have supply chain optimization reducing waste by 18%. through multi-factory coordination. So really, this unlocks so many things. I mean, this is really just kind of scratching the surface, in my opinion. I think there is so much more that this is going to unlock in the end, and this is really just a start. So that's very cool. All right, so if we're gonna let's keep going down here. So I then asked Perplexity to continue some research on. And I'm sorry this is a bit of a long video, but I really wanted to get into all of this. So if you do need to take a break, go ahead, take a breather. There's a lot here. I understand that. So no big deal if you need to break this up into multiple parts. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about the next research proposal that I gave it, which was basically, I wanted to talk about the social, economic, and geopolitical impacts of the AGI framework. I wanted to know exactly how this is going to impact the world. What can we expect from this, and what sort of impacts might we see realistically from a framework like this? So let's keep going down here and see what it found. Now, and also keep in mind, this is deep research from Perplexity. As far as I'm aware, this is pretty much like PhD level research and all these figures that it's coming up with. So, this is not data that I fed it. This is all independently. This was all independently generated by Perplexity. So let's just keep going down here. So, Perplexity has some interesting views on what's going to happen here. So we can see that we do risk displacing 40% of current jobs in knowledge-based sectors within developed economies. Now that sounds scary. I totally hear you. Right now, people are freaking out, going, "What do you mean 40% of jobs in knowledge-based sectors is a problem, Nick? What are we going to do?" Now, I do hear you, and I have a bit of a plan. Right now, I am working on a framework called the UBET model, and it basically tries to address this problem of people losing their jobs all at once from automation. The essentials are that it would introduce a revenue tax on businesses. And the reason for a revenue tax over a tax on profits is that revenue is a lot harder to skirt around in terms of taxes. So if you try to hide, if you try to take, or you could reduce your profits, sort of artificially by having business expenses that you don't really need, and then you wouldn't have to pay that tax. Versus if you tax revenue, it's a lot harder to sort of skirt around that. And so the idea is that you could have a tiered taxation model on revenue for businesses, with small businesses not having to pay anything to help really stimulate the economy. But the idea is that the larger businesses would have to pay significantly more on their revenue. But the concept is really rooted in the idea that you wouldn't have the system of UBI in the sense of everyone just gets free money. It wouldn't be that simple. It would be more like getting dividends in the country's GDP. So think of it like the businesses get taxed. That all gets pooled into a central sort of pool. And then that money gets redistributed to the citizens based on education level, and also things like certifications, personal growth, things that you have done to help further yourself, and also to help contribute back to the economy. If you are furthering your own education, you're probably also furthering the GDP of the nation, and therefore you should be getting a higher, basically, return on that investment in yourself. So that is sort of the idea. You're getting sort of dividends on the nation's GDP, and then you can use that money to reinvest in the economy and help keep it afloat. So it really just kind of circles back around. And a lot of people would say, like, why would you have a system like that? How could the elite, for example, support such a thing? And the reason is very simple. The elite don't inherently just want the people to be poor. In fact, they would rather have a stable consumer base that can help support them, because what that creates is an economy that they don't have to worry about value crashing on them, right? They have an economy at this point that's going to keep growing kind of just forever. And in their eyes, that's sort of an ideal situation. They will still be incredibly rich and they will get incredibly richer. But so will everyone else. So it sort of creates a system where everyone benefits. That's kind of the idea. But moving on. So we have basically, it's predicting that we would have 29% faster workforce reskilling through adaptive learning interfaces, 37% reduction in repetitive task roles versus 22% in centralized AI systems, and an emergence of AI supervision engineer positions projected to grow 140% annually. Okay, so this is very interesting to me because what this says is that this actually will create new positions. This will create new types of jobs that we hadn't really considered before. AGI supervision engineer was not a title just a year ago, but now we're talking about it, right? So that tells me that there are going to be other positions like this in the future where you're going to have jobs available to people just doing new things. And this has always been true with technological advancement. Anytime that technology has advanced in some significant way, there's always been a leap forward, and then jobs are created in new industries from that leap forward. It happens time and time again, and this is going to be no different, in my opinion. So let's move on here. So it does say that the Brookings Institution warns 40% of U.S. jobs face high automation risk, particularly in legal analysis, 68% automatable, and financial advisory services, 57%. The framework's logical processing model mitigates surveillance risks through 92% reduced cloud data transfer. Now, this is also a very interesting aspect of the framework, because what this means is that you're going to end up having a lot less confidential, potentially, information being transferred over the internet, and a lot more local processing on site happening. This creates a lot more privacy and a lot more safety. It makes it a lot harder to access data, and it makes people able to own their own data, right? So rather than having these companies all controlling our data, we get to take our data back and say, no, we get to own it. We're storing it on our own servers. You don't get that data anymore. So that's a really cool thing. So let's keep going on. So I know there's a lot here. I am so sorry that this is taking so long, but there's a lot to unpack. So AGI-driven tutoring systems demonstrate 63% higher student test scores through natural language processing adaptations. This is really cool, because what this means is that you can actually have AGI systems tutoring one-on-one. So you can have a system where you are now being instructed as a third grader in whatever level math that you need to be at in your education. You now have a PhD level math tutor tutoring you math, and it will go as high as you need to go, right? So if you are excelling, you're going to be able to just keep excelling basically forever. You will run out of ability to comprehend the concepts at a certain point, I feel like. Maybe not. Maybe eventually you could just comprehend all of math, and it would just take a long time. But that is sort of the general idea, is that you could have a tutor that basically understands anything, and can teach you very, very in-depth anything about any topic. That is so revolutionary when it comes to education, and I am very excited to see that all play out. So when we keep going down here, we can see that you can have 89% accuracy in complex problem solving, and decentralized credentialing systems using blockchain But there is something interesting that happens here, which is a risk of cognitive de-skilling, with 41% of learners showing reduced critical thinking when over-reliant on AGI outputs. Now, this is very, very worrying in a sense, because what it means is that you're actually saying people might rely on these tools to a degree that they start relying on them too much. They can't actually think for themselves because the tools just think for them all the time, and they've gotten used to that. This is something that I think we're going to need to address as a society, because this is a real risk. I literally just watched the movie Idiocracy the other day. If you haven't watched it, highly recommend it. It is very stupid and very accurate. So, yeah, so I think I could see a future where AGI takes things to a point where it really is hard for people to use cognitive thinking. Like critical thinking is going to become very difficult for people, and I think that is a worrying trend that we're going to need to keep an eye on. So. Let's keep going through here. So in manufacturing deployments, it's saying there's going to be 29% higher predictive maintenance accuracy, which is something I think we covered earlier. And we're going to have 37% of AI generated value going to local community energy funds through the UBET economic model. Now, that is very, very interesting to me, because what that means is we could actually have a system where you actually have, wow, that really actually does change things, because think about what this means. Ultimately, they're saying that AI value is going to be going back to your local community, right? So this isn't just going to be creating value for the upper class. This is going to be going back to your local community. And so this is going to help communities prosper. It is going to bring about so much wealth into areas that deeply, deeply need infusions of cash, basically, right? So having this democratized AI system is going to enable money to flow into areas where it just wasn't able to before, and that is very cool. So I'm very excited about that as well. And it's going to reduce this ultimately. This is what gets me, guys. It's going to reduce wealth concentration by 22% compared to the traditional equity models. That's unprecedented. I mean, reducing wealth concentration by 22%. I think that is like, if you had asked me to come up with a project to do that, I never could have. This is just one of those like amazing beneficial side effects that's going to happen from this, and I'm very excited about that as well. The more that I get into this, the more that I realize that this framework just changes absolutely everything for everyone, and it's generally all positive. I have yet to find an example where this just is universally bad, that something horrid is going to happen because of this. Is it possible? Yes, absolutely. I'm not denying that. But I would absolutely say that generally things are looking very good at this point. So that's very good news. So we can see here that in the financial markets, we can have 19% higher arbitrage identification speed, and 14% reduction in market volatility. So that's very, very cool to help stabilize markets. I'm not too familiar with how that generally works, but my understanding is that if you can have algorithms to sort of identify market volatility and arbitrage opportunities, then you can actually help to stabilize the markets as a whole and prevent flash crashes. So that's pretty cool. So then we have energy consumption. Reducing the energy consumption of AI models has been a problem for a long time, and this is something people have been concerned about. one of the really, really cool things about this is that it's saying dynamic load balancing supporting 89% renewable integration in smart grids. Basically, it's saying that with a 32% lower carbon footprint per AI transaction, we're going to be able to take renewable energy solutions and use it to power basically all of this, and in a way that's going to be clean and safe for the planet. So this doesn't have to be a negative thing overall. This can be a truly beneficial technology. It really doesn't have to be something that people need to be concerned about necessarily, in terms of something bad happening. I really don't foresee that at this point. So if you're out there and you're wondering, is AI going to end the world? I really truly don't believe that. No. So let's go to geopolitical realignment challenges. So saying that the open source architecture could reduce US-China AI patent dominance from 78% to 56% by 2030. Now, that sounds a little scary, but to be honest, I think this is a good thing. This is going to sort of democratize knowledge in a way that, and innovation in a way that really opens up the door to a sort of global society. For the first time, we're going to be able to break down borders because we're kind of going to have to, and we're going to be forced to. And borders are sort of just going to become concepts, I think. I really don't see a society where people are just so sort of centralized into their one country or nation or state or wherever, right? I see a society where people are kind of just roaming more about the world, because ultimately what's going to happen is, people are going to have so much free time on their hands, like everyone's going to want to travel. Maybe not everyone, but a lot of people are going to want to travel. And so living in any one singular place may not be quite as common. It's hard to say, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see more and more people just sort of roaming around the world, and not really being a citizen of any one place, so much as just sort of being a resident of Earth, which is kind of a cool existence, right? All right, so let's keep going on. So you can see that in terms of national security, actually, backing up a little bit here, I did skip over some things. We could enable emerging economies to capture 29% of AGI development value chains and create regulatory fragmentation with 14 competing governance models. Now, that's very exciting as well, because what this means is that we're going to allow economies that are developing to capture a lot of this wealth being generated. Almost a third of the wealth being generated is going to go to these developing economies. That is very huge, because these are places that absolutely need this technology right now in order to develop their nations, and this is going to enable that, right? So I'm very, very excited about this as well. Like I said, the more I keep getting into this, the more exciting it is, and that's why I'm sharing this with you guys, because this is a very exciting time to be alive, and everything is changing so fast. In terms of national security, we actually see 47% faster threat detection in decentralized defense networks, and risks of autonomous weapon systems proliferation exceeding MTCR guidelines. So that's fantastic news. What that means is that even though we're going to put this technology into the hands of everyone, like literally everyone is going to be able to run this, it's going to be okay, because the good guys are going to have the tools to detect and stop the bad guys before anything bad can happen. It's basically saying that we're going to be able to use these tools not just for, not just to build bombs, right? Like, people could do that. I'm not advising that. I don't want people to do that. Please don't do that. But if someone does, the government is going to be very, very on top of that. And it's going to happen very quickly, where they're going to close in on anyone trying to do anything like that. So having this be democratized is actually a very, very good net positive in the end, in terms of safety. Let's keep going on. So in terms of GDPR compliance costs, that gets reduced 37% through local first data processing. CCPA enforcement challenges increased 22% with cross-border AGI operations. And here's something very interesting. Singapore's model AI governance framework adoption accelerates by 89%. This is actually something I don't know too much about, but it's something I want to look into now, because that is basically saying like it's going to go from 0 to nothing, or sorry, from nothing to 100 almost, very fast. So that's a very interesting development. We're going to want to keep an eye on that. The framework's modular design enables customizable compliance packages for 48 regulatory jurisdictions and automated treaty analysis, reducing negotiation timelines by 41%. Okay, so basically all this is to say, things are changing fast, and this framework is going to enable a lot of changes to happen very quickly. Exactly how fast this happens is really up to us. And we have to decide exactly how this happens. That is something that I want to work with the community on. I want to work on figuring out what happens next. Because, ultimately, yes, we can just put this out and just say, okay, let's see what happens. But that seems a little irresponsible. Let's try to take a little bit of a more measured approach here. And let's make sure we have a plan in place so that the day that, we've released this MVP, everyone is ready for it. Everyone knows what to expect. And, everything is set in motion already, to handle it, on a societal level. I want people to understand that this is coming beforehand, so that people can get prepared ahead of time. Because I'm afraid that if I were to just drop this on the world like out of nowhere, that would be a very bad thing, because it creates an opportunity for someone somewhere to run away with it. Because the first person to it is going to be the first, or rather, the first person to it is going to have the greatest advantage, because they will have the first mover advantage. And so if I, release this in an open way, that kind of gets prevented altogether. Nobody has first mover advantage. Everyone starts from the same starting point, and that really democratizes things. So anyway, one of the things I want to talk about next is that I have partnered with Carrie Draper. So Carrie is actually a AI researcher, who is also studying consciousness, and he and I have partnered up, and we are now working together on the AGI framework. And so together we're hoping to make this framework a reality. If this sounds like something you're interested in helping with, I am sure Carrie will agree with me that we will take all the help we can get. We really want this to be a community effort. So please, if you have programming experience, specifically we're looking for people who know Next.js, ShadCN UI for the front end, and then for the back end we are looking for Django, Django REST framework, and Python. So those are primarily what we're using. At least at the current moment. Things could change. Things are fluid. It's very, very early. But right now, that's where we're at. So let's keep going on. So the other thing is, I met Carrie actually on this guy, David Shapiro. He has a Discord channel. And so I met Carrie there. And we got to talking, and so that's how we ended up partnering. So if you guys want to join David's Discord, he actually has a Patreon that you can go and join for $5 a month. We're all on there. And if you'd rather not, then we have the Patreon, we have the Discord for the AGI framework. So if you want to check that out, it's over here. If we go to the AGI Framework website, it is down here. The Discord link is right there. So if you want to join our Discord community, it is free. You can join from the link right there, and we would love to have you. So yeah, so that's how I met Carrie. So moving on, let's talk about the AGI framework and exactly how it could be used in a way to do something really special. So in this example, I want to go over how you could use the AGI framework to start a gaming mouse company. Now, this sounds pretty ambitious. Already, you're probably thinking, I don't know the first thing about that, Nick. How would I even begin? And the truth is, you don't really need to know how to begin. That's where the AGI framework comes in. So basically, the way it would enable you to do this is that it would go through the steps to do this, basically one by one. So it would start with research, and first it would start by scanning platforms like Reddit, YouTube, Amazon reviews, and esports forums, and try to figure out what gamers want in a mouse, right? So it's going to generate market reports, iterate on prototypes, and basically just learn as it improves. And then it'll move on to design and manufacturing. So it'll hook up with CAD software to create 3D models, simulate materials and durability, and even handle supplier negotiations all automatically, right? So the idea is that you can really have it handle a lot more automation than what you would typically expect out of just your standard LLM chatbot. So then it could do marketing and sales, right? So it builds an e-commerce store in minutes. We'll run A/B tests on ads across social channels and adjust pricing and promotions in real time based on customer feedback, right? So it can do all of this using this modular approach. And so the end result is you end up with a fully automated business where AGI just does all of the heavy lifting and continuously learns and improves as it does it. So even after it gets started and then does a thing that you want it to do, it doesn't just stop there, right? It doesn't just say, okay, wow, that was great. What do you want to do next, right? No, it just keeps going. And so before you know it, you'll wake up one morning and it will just have done things overnight that you didn't even expect it to do that are really, really helpful. So that's one of the really key advancements here. So let's keep going here. So how exactly does this all work? Because right now you're thinking this sounds freaking magical, guys. And I totally get where you're coming from. This doesn't sound like it could be possible with today's tools, but really it is. The way it works is you have a model manager, right? And the model manager basically just registers LLMs, and they can be local or over an API. It doesn't really matter where the LLM lives. It can just connect to wherever it is. And then, so from there, you can then plug that model into one of the various modules, right? So if you have a planning module, you could plug in DeepSeek R1. If you have the sensory input module, right, you might want a more lightweight model for that. So you could plug in something very lightweight, but yet very effective for a sensory module, right? Something that has multimodal inputs. So you can really customize everything really, really down to very fine details to make exactly what you're looking for. And that's really the key innovation here. Is it's not just creating one particular thing or for one particular use case. It allows you to define what your use case is and what you're trying to do, which is cool. So the cool thing too is that once you have the models that you can register, you can actually just create custom modules for those models on the fly. And you can do it also just through a standard web form, right? This is a standard interface. So you just give it a name, give it a description, and give it a system prompt, right? And then that's your module. It's really that simple because all it needs to know is what does this thing do and what is the system prompt that it's going to use for this module. So for example, for a planning module, you could just call it planning module, give it a description of this module helps with decision making and planning, and then basically say for a system prompt, please consider the following information and decide how to go about planning to basically execute
the tasks associated with this data, right? So something along those lines, you can really customize it however you want, but that's sort of a general idea. And then from that, you connect up, DeepSeek R1 to that module, and now you have a planning module, right? And you don't have to specify, like, where does this fit into the framework, right? You don't have to specify when does the planning module get used. That's all handled automatically. Now, that sounds really cool, right? But this is actually just really simple as well. All you need is a module router. And that module router is, again, just another module running another model. So it really, really is this simple, guys. The idea is then that module router can determine the next downstream module to send the data to, right? So if your AGI is currently working on some problem and it needs to figure out something else that module isn't, designed for, it would then call the next downstream module and say, okay, like next I need to do some task prioritization. I'm going to use the task prioritization module in order to do that, right? So then from there, the task prioritization module might say, okay, now I know what task I want to do. Let me go next to, the next downstream module, right? And this doesn't just end. It doesn't just reach this final conclusion and execute the task and then it says, okay, I'm done. Once that happens, it then goes to the next downstream module. It's a continuous loop. So what that means is it just continues to improve forever, for as long as you leave it running. That's really fundamentally different because currently, you talk to a chatbot and then it just finishes and goes, okay. But you're like, okay, but like now I want to do the next thing. Like, why doesn't it just pick up where it left off, right? That's what this enables. So that is really what's going to be so groundbreaking because you literally will. You go to sleep one night and the next morning you will wake up and there will be some new advancement every single day, forever. That is so game changing. Like, I just can't even help to I can't even stress how big that is. And to me, that is everything about this framework that makes it work, is that it is just continuous reinforcement learning. And a system that happens to work on a gaming rig, right? So, or a gaming laptop. So you can now just, with thousands of dollars of equipment, have a working AGI. This is revolutionary, guys. Like, this changes the game. So basically the idea now is, okay, you've got these models, you've got these modules. All you need to do now is just spawn an AGI. Now, the way you do that is very simple. You just create a new chat instance, right, with one of the modules. And then once it begins processing, it just continues. Like, that's it. Once you hit enter after you hit that initial prompt, it's going to just process forever until you hit stop or pause. And then, but otherwise, it will just continue. So that's really, 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 really cool. And very, very revolutionary in my eyes. So think of it like this, right? If you have all of that capability, but now you've rolled that all into a simple UI that anyone can just plug and play models and modules and do configure it however you want, you now can set up an intelligence system in a matter of minutes, customized for whatever solution you need, and there you go. Now you have it, and it just runs, and that's it. This is just so revolutionary. I just cannot stress enough how big this is going to be. So the other thing is, once you've started it, it's not like it then goes on forever and you have no control. That's something I want to clarify, because I think it's very easy to then think oh God, I've now started something I can't stop, right? No, you actually can just at any point chat with it. It will take in that input and utilize it in its processing. So the idea is it doesn't just it doesn't stop processing, but it's continuously taking in input as well. And that input doesn't have to be text. It could also be audio. It could be sensor data in real time, right? So if you're running a factory, you can have your AGI server receiving, sensory input from sensors all around the factory. So it knows everything going on in real time, and it can respond in kind, right? So that's sort of the general idea. So yeah. And then and the other thing to keep in mind here is that this is a intent-driven architecture, so it doesn't just do things, right? So it will ask for permission before it is able to do something, right? And then from there, the idea is that it would have an increased set of permissions over time. So rather than, and this isn't entirely documented, and that is entirely my fault. I do need to expand the documentation out, but basically the idea is that you will have a system where the permissions can just be gradually incremented over time as you gain more trust in the system. So as it learns, okay, I've got the capacity now to control this industrial equipment because they've trusted me to do this, but I can't yet, control the nuclear reactor. They don't quite trust me to do that yet. So you can really customize that, and so it does keep constraints on things for safety's sake. So it isn't just, it will just do anything unrestricted. There are protections in place. I did think of this. There was more to it than that. Anyway, so let's go through a real world example. So let's say that you have this gaming mouse company that you now have. Fantastic. So you now want to design a more ergonomic gaming mouse. You have your first model out. It's selling like hotcakes, and so now you want to make an even better one. So the sensory module is going to start by taking feedback from forums and social media. The intent recognition module is going to extract key insights, like the need for better thumb grips, right? Maybe that's what people are looking for. Maybe people are like, that's my biggest complaint in the current model. And so the context management module is going to track previous iterations to avoid repeating mistakes, right? So it's not just going to continue doing the same things over and over and over. It's going to make improvements. The planning module then creates a step-by-step improvement plan. The knowledge base pulls in relevant design successes and studies, and then the execution engine syncs with CAD software to generate 3D models. So it's all working together in synergy, right? And then with testing and refinement, the scenario simulation module runs stress tests, the introspection module runs from past failures, and the summarization module condenses the results into actionable insights. And again, this is all very, very customizable. You can set up your modules however you want, and customize them however you need, for your use case. So it's not like, oh, yeah, maybe that works for one person, but not for me. No. You're going to be able to set this up exactly the way you want, which is so cool. So testing and refinement, the scenarios, I think I already went over this. But basically, so the idea is that it's going to be able to do everything that you need to run this company, right? And it's just going to do it using a series of modules. And if you don't have a module that's working for you, that all you have to do is add one. And if the community, comes up with new modules, you can just grab one that someone else is using and import it into yours, right? So your server can run the same community modules as other people's, or if people want to make proprietary modules, they can do that too. It really is very flexible. So yeah, that's the general idea. So let's address some misconceptions and safety. So some say LLMs just aren't capable enough for AGI, or that we just need some kind of breakthrough first. This isn't going to work for X, Y, or Z. The truth is, LLMs are already capable of reasoning, planning, and dynamically adjusting. The issue has been the lack of a framework, really, to properly integrate all the capabilities. It really hasn't been that the LLMs are not capable enough. I will say there are definitely things that they are, some things they are better at, some things they are worse at. A lot of it does come down to prompting. Prompting is a huge skill, and it takes a lot of time to get right. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So that can honestly be a big part of it. I think these tools are really a lot more capable than most people realize at this point. And a lot of people also tried, ChatGPT early on in GPT 3.5 days, and they were like, it's okay, but it's not, everything that I want it to be yet. Things have changed a lot. If you haven't used ChatGPT lately, or Grok, or anything lately, DeepSeek R1, any of the latest models, you should definitely give them a try. Give Perplexity Deep Research a try. All these tools are really, really incredible these days. And I'm able to, I've been able to create the entire framework so far using these tools. So it isn't that they aren't capable enough. So let's just talk about real quick again why a framework is necessary. And we kind of went over this earlier, but basically a model alone just is never going to cut it. We need to have a framework if we really want to have true intelligence systems. It's really the only way that I see forward, and it just makes so much sense. When you think about the technologies that have enabled true innovation in the world, like the internet or the telephone or the printing press, all these things have something in common, which is that they were basically frameworks, right? They enabled something else to be created, but didn't specify what, right? They enabled something really cool to be created, but didn't specify what was what could be created with that thing, right? So with the printing press, yeah, you can create books, but they didn't specify what the book had to say, right? That was really kind of revolutionary, right? Versus if you create a thing that can only create a specific type of book, like we have certain models right now, right? That can only do specific things. Well, that's not very useful, right? But if you create a universal thing that can create, do general purpose things like the internet, right? It just created, a set of protocols to use. No one actually created, the pages or anything yet. They just set out a set of standards to use and said, here you go. And then people said, oh, wow, we can create websites and web apps and all these things. And then, that led to things like podcasts and YouTube videos and social media and everything that we love today, and all because of very, very simple protocols that no one even really knows about. To be honest, most of the people in the world have no idea what TCP/IP is, and they don't need to know. That's beyond what they need to be aware of. But everyone uses it every single day. So let's kind of talk about safety considerations. So basically, the idea here is that the AGI framework, and we're getting close to the end here, guys. So thank you for sticking with me so far. I know this has been a long one, but we are getting close to the end. So the AGI framework is designed to function like a human mind. So with continuous monitoring, adaptive learning loops, and ethical safeguards baked into every module, basically we're trying to ensure that the system is learning and evolving and doing it safely and transparently, right? So the entire system can be audited. You can see exactly what the AGI's thoughts are, why it's thinking that, right? You can see a log of everything going on in every single module. And the idea is that enables you to see, okay, well, why did it think that? Why did it do that? Why did it, perform this action? Well, you can see exactly why. It's not a mystery, all right? So typical LLMs, if you just have a single model, trying to figure out why it's doing something becomes really, really hard. But if you just take a single model and put it into 30 modules inside of a framework, well, suddenly you can tell exactly what's going on. You can see exactly how it's working and why it's making certain decisions and doing certain things. It's all very auditable, which makes it very easy to fix. You can be like, oh, okay, this module is suddenly having a lot of bias all of a sudden. All you have to do is change the prompt a little bit, and now it doesn't, right? So this is what is really so cool about this. So let's talk lastly about, basically, I just need to plug, join the movement, right? I would love to create something really special with you guys. This framework is so much more than just code, or just some software project to me. This is everything. This is our future as a species, and I don't take this lightly. I think that everything that we're about to experience is basically going to change the human experience forever. And that's a bold statement. I get it. But the thing is, with technology like this, it really unlocks almost unlimited possibilities. Almost anything that is possible becomes possible. So if you want to go and colonize Mars, like Elon Musk, okay, it's really not that weird anymore, guys. I mean, literally anything. You want to go to Andromeda, probably soon, guys. You'll be able to. I don't know how soon. It might take a while. But this is what I'm saying is this sort of thing is what unlocks these next technologies to happen down the road. Because once you start having infinite, just continuous improvement, and the processing power obviously is just going to get better and better, especially as it designs better and better chips. I mean, the possibilities just really, really open up to the point where almost anything becomes possible. The sky really just becomes the limit, and all the things that you've seen in any sci-fi novel almost becomes very, very realistic. To the point where now I've started to look at sci-fi in a very different way, where I look at something like cyberpunk, or that entire genre, and I think wow, that's actually not just some far off fantasy anymore. That's actually the future, which in some sense is scary, because a lot of that genre. I mean, it's very dystopian. I mean, let's be real. But I don't foresee that being the true reality here. I see something much more just luxurious lifestyles where everyone just gets to do as they please, leading to sort of, this kind of identity crisis, I think, for a lot of people at first, where, people don't really know what it's gonna, what they're gonna do with their lives. And I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch unfold, as people start to recognize, what's really important in life isn't so much about making money or doing my job. What I really want to do in life is build experiences with people, build relationships, and go out and do things and travel and see the world and the universe. I don't want to sit around at home and, sit on my computer and work for some corporation that doesn't care about me. I want to go out and I want to live my life. That's what's going to be possible. That's what I'm trying to create.